webinar. First met the folks at Paymerang. By the way, Michael, this wasn't on our sort of script to talk about, but where did this name come from?
Yeah, Steve, that's a great question. We get it all the time. It's the idea is it is like a boomerang with payments. So you send us money, and then we send you money. It's a beautiful thing. It is Paymerang.
Perfect. I really like it because I'm thinking Paymerang and I'm thinking like a lemon meringue pie or something, but I actually like that. That makes a lot more sense. So I want to welcome you all to this webinar. I'm really excited about it. I got introduced to Paymerang maybe a month or so, 2 months ago, and they have a really amazingly unique proposition for not just senior living, really lots of verticals, but this is something I just have not seen anybody using in the senior living space. And it's a way to make your life easier, to reduce staff load, and actually to get a little bit of money back. So it's actually something that doesn't cost you any money. So a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. We have both chat and question and answers, and it looks like I actually have question and answers turned off. I'd rather have you use chat if you have questions. Chat's open and available. If you do chat, one of the things you'll notice when you go into chat is that it will initially say that you are talking to just panelists. If you can move that to panelists and attendees, if you've got questions, it just makes it easier for everybody if they can see the conversations. I know in a lot of webinars and virtual events, people are kind of afraid of chat. We actually love chat. We found it adds to the conversation rather than takes away. We are recording this. We will make it available to folks afterwards. It usually takes us a day to get it rendered and back up. And our presenter today is Michael Dorr. And we were talking just before we got on because we both have last names that could subject us to humiliation when we were kids, but we've gotten over that now. And so another one of those points of connection. So Michael, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you and talk to us about something fantastic and profitable.
That's right. Steve, thank you so much. And I think a lot of times AP processes are, I think the revenue cycle gets a lot of attention for a lot of good reasons, but AP, sending money out the door, approving invoices is just a real hassle for folks. So it's an area where we are just really glad to be able to help our clients. I'm our vice president for senior living. Prior to this, I actually helped start an insurance comparison business. I've been in kind of fintech and insurtech for a while. Live in Richmond, Virginia with my wife, Liz. Recently graduated the Darden business, and we have a pet corgi named Lady David Bowie, who we love and adore and are big fans. So who is Paymerang? Well, we were founded in 2010. We have clients, as you mentioned, all across the country: healthcare, education, media, banking, and we process billions of dollars every year in our clients' accounts payable, vendor bill payments to over 200,000 vendors, and it's growing all the time. And because of that, we put industry-leading risk management into everything we do. We're audited. We, cross our T's and dot our I's. And for our banking services, we're partnered with both Visa and Bancorp Bank. This is, I think, just a huge kind of opportunity, in fintech and also currently in senior living. This is right here is the whole sort of procure to pay value proposition. And in an ideal world, your finance officers, your controllers, those who manage the budget, a department would go to purchase something. Your finance office would compare it to the budget, would approve it or not approve it. And then, the invoice would get ingested to your system automatically. You'd be able to view it without having to code and enter a whole bunch of things. And then when you're ready to pay, the funds would just get dispersed, and a vendor would never call back and say, hey, I missed my payment or I don't see it. And that's the ideal world. Instead, typically right now, most of your organizations, I think, you have situations where departments are purchasing things. It arrives on your controller's or CFO's desk after it's already been bought. There's very little they can do at that point. And then when they go to pay, it's this very paper-based process as well, with paper checks that bounce, get lost in the mail, and are fraud laden. So there's a lot of opportunity within that to automate, these processes. So we come at it from the payments perspective. So instead of today, a lot of your offices are, they're basically printing, when it comes time to make a payment, they're printing out hundreds of checks, having to get envelopes, stamps, put all that in the mail, and send that out to your suppliers. Instead of doing that, our clients send an electronic file from their accounting platform. They upload that to our web-based platform, our web-based application. We're a good funds model. That means we ask for the funds up front in order to disperse the payments. So our clients then initiate a wire to a for benefit of account, and then essentially at that point, they're done. We handle all of the chase, all the follow-up on the payments. We reconcile everything. And the last step, because we're able to pay a percentage of your suppliers with a credit card, we will actually pay cash back rewards to you, our client. We will never send you an invoice for this service. You will never have to put a check in the mail to Paymerang. We do not have an accounts receivable department, because we generate our revenue on this credit card payment. And it's so good for everyone that we can actually share some of that back, with the client. So it's a great service for everyone. Why go electronic? Well, Steve, it's for the same reason you and I don't go to the grocery store and cut checks. It is more convenient to be able to just go ahead and, swipe the credit card. And especially when we're going to do it for you, and you can make these payments from anywhere. Just like you can enter in a credit card and buy anything online at any given minute, our team can do that, on your behalf. So we've seen a lot of interest with regard to business continuity, as folks are, having to take non-essential medical staff out of their communities. We're seeing a lot of interest in things that can be done remotely, which Paymerang can be. So it's remote friendly, faster delivery. Your vendors are going to be happier. I mean, two things are really critical for your communities. You want your employees to be happy in delivering a quality service. You want your vendors happy in delivering a quality service. Those two things really go a long way towards the quality of life, for your residents. So you want those vendors to be happy. Getting rid of paper, it's great for the environment, but it's also great for your filing cabinets and everything else that you have to deal with. And then security. Security and fraud are a huge problem. We saw a report last year, 83% of organizations saw some sort of fraud attempt from an outsider or a criminal on their organization, be it trying to get at their data or finances. So, and with regard to COVID, we are seeing that skyrocket. Those emails pretending to be someone's boss or pretending to be a CFO or controller at the organization. The criminals are getting better and better at impersonating the people who are in control of our finances in order to try to steal our money. So the security that we provide you is a huge piece of the value proposition, and is actually, people used to come to us for the rewards, then it was the efficiency. Now increasingly it's because of security. And then lastly, you don't get cash back rewards when you pay with checks. That's just not a thing. So the additional increased revenue is a huge, is just a great piece of the value proposition. I want to just touch on this really quick, because business continuity, everybody is looking at their business continuity plans right now. I think a lot of our business continuity plans assume that if there were, say, a fire and we couldn't get access to our office, we could go down the street and set up another office. In the era of COVID, that doesn't work. We're all working from home. People did not have business continuity plans that assumed all of their team would be working from home for a long period of time. So if you have processes where someone has to take a paper invoice, walk it down the hall, get a physical signature from someone else, checks that have to be signed by multiple people, and invoices that need to be reviewed in person, is broken down. in the time that we're living through. We can't do that. We can't walk down the street to go see our CFO. So anything that you can do that makes you more secure and that makes you not so reliant on the office, this is a time to start looking at those things. And as you return to a sense of normalcy, begin to enhance those areas that you really need to focus on. So, and payments has been one of them for a lot of organizations. What does it take to get up and running with a service like Paymerang? Well, typically it's actually 30 days or less. It's 20 hours or less of a client's time. Really, the only thing we need is because instead of printing out a check file from your ERP, you're taking a payment file and uploading that to our web-based portal. Really, once we get that payment file working, we're 90% of the way there. So it's not a lot of time. It's really easy to get up and going. It's typically 4 weeks or less, and most folks, say it was easier than it's going to be. And I think it's always good to share a story. Continuing Healthcare Solutions, they're in Ohio. They have 31 communities, and Governor Kasich gave the order that said non-essential medical personnel had to leave the communities, and that meant these accountants that work there, they weren't going to be able to have access to their check printer and print out their checks. So they called us. We had them up and running in about 2 or 3 weeks, and they didn't miss a beat, with their suppliers. And we got them implemented in that amount of time across 31 locations. And we're just really proud to have been able to stand with them and support them, in a time of crisis. And they're earning rewards, and they were so thrilled. Their CFO turned right around and just asked, how can I be helpful? How can I let folks know about this? And that's typically the experience for us. Our clients turn around and they really become, our, kind of preaching the word for us. So it's good. So Steve, that's it. That's what I got. I wanted to keep it high level and glad to answer any questions that you or others may have.
Yeah, so if you have questions, drop them in the chat. I've been making quite notes for some questions here along the way. So the first thing is that when a file gets uploaded and funded, how long until payment actually gets initiated?
Great question. So we run our process twice a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon. If we have the funds in the file an hour before our process runs, it goes into that batch of payments. Checks are printed and mailed within 24 hours. ACH email goes out, remittance email goes out the same day, the funds deposited the next business day. And then for credit cards, 90% of those settle in about 3 business days.
Perfect. So what happens if I've got like an immediate payment I need to get done? Do I just do that on my own, or do I do that through you, or what does that look like?
Yeah, look, my recommendation is if it's something that has to go out immediately, that you have your team, just issue a check. Our service simply authorizes us, or our agreement authorizes us to make payments on your behalf. It does not require that you use us for all payments. So if you're in a situation where funds just have to go out the door and you got to FedEx a check to someone overnight, you can just do that in-house. But this will cover our clients for 97%, 99% of the payments they're going to make.
Perfect. So why don't I, since sort of at least the money back portion of it, and I know it's more than that, but since the money back portion of it is based on credit card payments, why don't I do that myself?
Yeah, look, it's you could try, and we have plenty of people who try to do this in-house and then realize they can't. It's very complicated. A lot of the value we add is actually the vendor enrollment process, which we do with every batch of payments that you submit. So we reach out to all of your vendors and suppliers. We figure out their preferred payment method, whether it's card, ACH, or check, and then we deliver that card 5 different ways. A lot of vendors want to get 60% of the card payments we make are on the phone. Somebody from our team has to call a vendor. We know their preferred hours for doing that. So Steve, if you want to have your staff spend more time doing AP, you're welcome to it. But I just think it's going to be a lot of your team's time and effort, that the idea is to reallocate that towards something that's higher value to the organization other than just dispersing payments.
Great. Okay, I've got a couple of questions for you. I'm a family with PayScan. I think that probably means facility with PayScan. Is there a system for approvals? I hope you know what that means, because I don't.
Well, so I would assume, I'm sorry, it said, I couldn't understand.
PayScan?
Okay, yeah. So we do have approvals that we have. Typically, at the point where AP funds are getting dispersed, there's kind of one last level of approval that's going on, that's high level. That's your CFO or CEO who's having to do the last sign off on these checks. So we do have an approval process, for that last stage, where someone can go and review the payments and then, click approve. And so we do have that kind of functionality. We're building in more and more like approval workflows that are going to come out in our 2.0 version later this summer. But we do run into that. But a lot of the other approvals are happening, in the invoice automation area, and where we have a lot of partners who we work with who provide those services, and they can accommodate that too. So
gotcha. So does it require any specific accounting programs?
So we've yet to find an accounting platform we can't work with. We work with over, I think, 40 or 50 accounting platforms at this point. So no, I mean, there's, really, because we're not integrating. We don't integrate with the accounting platform, and we do that to make it easier, because really all we need is a payment file. And essentially what we do is we have our clients create what we call a dummy bank account called Paymerang in their platform. They then will they'll do a virtual check run against that dummy bank account, and that will clear all the payments out in their general ledger. So everything's marked as paid and settled and reconciled in the GL. As a part of that process, you can usually get some sort of a CSV file or an Excel file with the payment details that we use for our upload. That's how it works in broad strokes, and that works in just about any accounting platform. And the real key is just getting that payment file. Sometimes we will need to do some custom work, or we will need to work with the ERP to kind of massage a payment file out. But it's a thing that most accounting platforms are capable of accommodating.
FreshBooks, QuickBooks?
Oh, absolutely. Both in the cloud and on the ground, or PC. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, I know there aren't a lot, but the reason I asked, I actually had a conversation with a CEO of a fairly large organization that uses QuickBooks. I was sort of surprised about that, but it made sense for their organization. Can you talk about how many senior living communities you're in and/or organizations you're in right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to talk about that. So we really got started pursuing senior living really towards the end of last year, and so Continuing Healthcare Solutions was actually our first client that represents 30 communities that we signed. We've signed another probably 8 or 10 contracts, and because some of them are management groups, it represents hundreds of communities now around the country. So we've just seen incredible growth over the last 3 months, and so yes. So we have about, a mixture of independent kind of, non-for-profit leading age type groups. And we have, some of the for-profit type, management groups that we represent as well.
Great. So Jan, David, Jonathan, I think that answered your questions. If I didn't, please drop me another note there. Can you talk about how much money you get back?
Yeah, absolutely. So, back of the envelope, what I'd ask folks to do, although I'm not going to stand by this at all because I need to get the data. Typically what we do is, prior to signing, we create kind of pricing, how much basis points we're going to give you back on the credit card. The way we figure that out is we like to get a list with your AP spend, all the vendors you pay and how much you pay each of them in a given year. And then we do an analysis of that to determine, how many sort of millions of dollars, whether it's $1 million we think we can put on the credit card to 10, 20, depending on how big. Some of these large management groups can have 20 or $30 million in card spend off of 100 million in AP. Some of the independent, kind of nonprofit type communities that we represent, it'll be 5 or 6 million, or even 2 or 3 million in card spend off of 20 million in AP. So it really depends, but you can assume that about 20% of your overall AP spend will go via card, and from there, I mean, you can take, I'd rather just do an analysis. If you're interested,
okay, that's fine.
Call me.
That's fine. That's all right.
I'll do it. I don't want to say anything that could, that would be wrong.
Somebody come back.
I'd hate.
So you're talking some fairly significant numbers. How small a company would you work with? I mean, 6-bed would probably, and we don't have a lot of those as our audience anyway. But we probably have a fair number of people who have, say, 50 resident memory care buildings and that kind of thing. Maybe $1 million, $2 million a year in payables. Is that too small?
No, it's not. It's not too small. And so for organizations, that are of that size, we have kind of the free model for our service. We work in independent K-12. Actually, we have hundreds of like little itty bitty independent K-12 and boarding schools all over the country, and they may be 1 or 2 million, in AP spend, right? And in that case, the service is simply free to those organizations. So it's a, if we think it's very small, the worst thing that can happen dealing, with us is that our contract is going to say, hey, we're going to process all your payments. You'll never have to buy another book of checks ever again. And, the service is just totally free to you and your organization. So
it means at least buying a little bit less postage and a few less envelopes and no bloody tongues from looking.
I mean, look, if I showed up at your office and offered to print out all your checks, put them in the mail, and I said I wouldn't charge you anything, and I'm never going to take a day off, I'm going to come there right on demand, would you say no? I mean,
yeah, exactly. So one of the things that I know happens is that sometimes the invoices get double paid, or they get payments after they weren't supposed to. I mean, as somebody who collects money from vendor organizations, we have had a few times where we've received payments that we shouldn't have received. Either an invoice has been double paid, or we ended a relationship and they still sent us money. And of course, we always immediately say, hey, we'll go back and say, hey, we got this check. You want us to tear it up, send it back? What do you want to do? And we send it back. And we're pretty, we want to be very conscientious about that. But if I'm the organization who's paying those bills, I always worry a little bit that I'm going to actually end up paying something I don't owe. Do you provide any help with that or not?
Absolutely. So we become essentially an extension of your AP team, and we handle the situations the way your AP staff would handle them today. If we've overpaid for an additional month for a service, we'll work with the vendor to give you a credit if it's an ongoing kind of business relationship. If it's a situation where you've paid and you've ended a relationship, it will work to recoup the funds. The vendor has to obviously be compliant with that, but we'll work with them and with your team, like an extension of your team in those situations, and likely handle the situation probably the way you would handle it today in most cases.
Great. So, obviously, you touched on this a little bit, but I actually like to dig just a little bit deeper into this. How does the COVID crisis, how does this help with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you, looking in the rear view, I think a lot of communities are kind of in front of this point now, although maybe some are still not allowing, non-essential medical staff into buildings. But if your processes are based in having people in your office, we've seen what a weakness that is, especially for a lot of these organizations that really have to consider an at-risk population who are in these rehabilitation centers, memory care centers, all of that is just, and so I think it's exposed a weakness in of our business operations, that they are so glued to our physical buildings. And so whether or not, and it looks like in some places we're having a real surge with this COVID situation, there's no reason why we couldn't be having surges in other places too. So, but even regardless of that, I think even if you don't think that, you're going to experience a surge of COVID in your own neighborhood, or it's just good to have the peace of mind that you've improved this business process and you're ready for whatever it might be. I mean, it could be that you have a case, a bunch of cases of tuberculosis or something, some other situation that could impact your residents, and you're going to be prepared for that when it happens, whether it's a month from now or 5 years from now. You're going to have a more secure process that is going to be more flexible and is going to allow your team to be more agile. And that is just an inherently good thing to help you through, the storm and situations.
So the other question I have is that, frankly, when you first, when Lola first plugged me into talking to you guys about this, and she started talking about this, and hey, they got this really cool thing, and it doesn't cost you anything, and you can actually get money back. I kind of went, how come I've never heard of this before? Is this a real thing? I mean, you must get this from others. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, whether it's real or not, we do really process, billions of dollars every year. It's a real thing. We are a real company. We have 100 people in our office who have actual jobs, kind of doing it. So I think part of why this hasn't occurred is because, firms have banking services, but banks are really good. They're really good at issuing loans. They're really good at giving you a credit card. But, you need another company that's like the little terminal in the gas station. That's not, Bank of America that owns that thing in a lot of cases. It's another company, an entrepreneur who had to go in there and bridge that mile between you, the customer who wants to pay for your gas, and the gas station, right? And so, banks really don't do a job at providing, those kinds of services. So that's created an opportunity for companies like ours to step in and say, we're going to be that bridge between your organization and your vendors and the banks, and we're going to provide a service that connects everything. And people believe it, but we tend to find pretty consistent about 20% of the AP volume, dollar volume, will go via card. It depends, some industries, it's maybe more like 15%, some it's more like 25 or 30, but it's about 20% that will go via card. And then we'll typically get another 60% to go ACH, which is fantastic because those payments are going to get made fast. Sometimes if you see you're paying a vendor now ACH, you can renegotiate with that vendor. When we had a client, large doctor's office, they've got 100 offices across the East Coast, and they went and did that with a medical supplier and worked out great for them. So, there's a lot of benefits. It's just you have so much going on in your office. It's hard to really do this in-house well, and the banks weren't servicing it well, and that's where companies like us could step in and provide some real value to these businesses.
So are there any industries where this is almost the norm?
Some are better than others. Some are better than others. I've seen like in construction, you see a lot more there's some legacy players that have been doing that for a while. You see, I think media kind of buying, you see more, digital payments. Some of that has to do with the expediency with which you need to disperse funds in media. Yep. So I think that's why, they're leading more. But I'll tell you, healthcare is trailing overall as a sector, and senior living, if you want to put it as a subsector of healthcare, is by and large is trailing as well. globally, or in the US, you see about 50% of business-to-business payments are getting made via check. About 30% are getting made via ACH. About 20% via credit card. And what I see from selling in this area is, it's more like 90% of these payments are just getting made via check. Within senior living, and even within large hospitals. I mean, there's a huge hospital we were talking to in Orlando, and they got a whole room full of people. All they do is, put checks in the mail. And it's like kind of crazy when you think about it. So,
well, that's actually pretty cool, because I will tell you, I'm sure that is true for some of the larger senior living organizations. And you start to think about, what would it be? I mean, if you had a huge organization like that, you could potentially even save some FTEs, I would think. So that's pretty exciting. That's pretty exciting. I mean, probably for most people who are watching, not likely to be the case that they'd save an FTE, but it would just more likely to make their lives a lot easier. But if you're part of a big organization, it'd be really, really good. So another question for you is, wouldn't this business model work well for accounts receivable also?
Yeah, look, I think it's a similar problem in that you've got all of these, customers, and they have money and they want to get you the money, and you don't have as good of a way of getting the money, right? And you add the insurers to the mix, and you add that there's different rates based on, I think that is one of the toughest problems in America right now from a business challenge. All of the overhead that goes into accounts receivable and those kinds of payments. So it's incredibly complex. You need to have a lot more complicated business rules that would go into kind of all of this. And there are companies, I can't think of any of the top of my head, but I've looked at companies that are doing exactly that are trying to do a better job of being the gatekeepers kind of between, the insurance company, the patient, and and whether it's a senior care kind of organization or a hospital. I think there's a phenomenal opportunity there, and we've actually also been looking, at companies that we can kind of attach to, or who are kind of going in that way, because that's kind of where we are. Just kind of in our DNA is pushing things to be more automated, more digital, and there are companies out there that are doing that, and it's fascinating to see how they're tackling it right now.
Well, one of the things I just really like about this, and I think sometimes it gets lost in the weeds, is that there are so many ways that if you really stop and look at what you're doing and what some other companies are doing in other areas, there are ways that you can really give yourself a significant competitive advantage by taking advantage of these little things. And because you can look at what you're doing and say, yeah, I already got a system. Yeah, the cash back would be nice, but it's really not in the scope of my overall operation. It's not much money. But, imagine for a minute that you could do Paymerang like things 10 times over in your building, and all of a sudden you're looking at saving a few couple for just one building, maybe an FTE, and you save. Let's say you save $50,000 a year, puts another $50,000 or $70,000 a year into your bottom line. All of a sudden, that's like putting an extra resident in your building, and so it becomes really significant. And those can be really great competitive edges. So I think I'm at the end of my questions. Any last words? How do people get in touch with you? I guess your email's up on the last slide there, and we'll send you out. What we will do is probably tomorrow we'll send you out a link to this webinar, and it'll have a little more information. And if you don't have any more questions, I guess we are done, unless you have last comments, Michael.
Yeah, sure, Steve. I just want to thank you for having us on the webinar here. It's always fun to follow what you're tracking within senior living. It's always exciting to hear your stuff, and so it's been on my bucket list to get on here for a little bit. So I'm glad to have finally done that. But my contact information is here on the screen. If folks have questions, they can email me. I'm even happy just to do this as an educational thing. If you just want to learn more about AP, you know, and you don't, you know, you're probably maybe not looking to even make a change for a while. I'm always happy to just talk about these issues because, you know, I think it's just really important. I don't think we were meant to sit around and do like little things that the robots are quite frankly really good at. You know, I think we were meant to, you know, put the strategic vision into place for our organizations, you know, not to do these kinds of tedious things. That's the beauty of software. You should take advantage of it, and have your folks focus on where you're really adding value for your seniors and your communities. So that's my last little nugget right there. And Steve, again, I just want to thank you for, you know, having me on.
Well, I love the conversation. I love what you're doing. The last thing I'd actually like to say, and maybe you're going to tell me I'm wrong about this, but usually when we do webinars like this, you know, we're talking really strictly to owners and operators of senior living communities. But this would work very well for any of the large vendor organizations as well, right? I mean, if I were selling products or services into senior living and I've got millions of dollars, or you know, get it closing in that direction in payables, this would work for me just as well as it would for a senior living community, maybe even better, right? So
yeah, absolutely. You know, anyone I'd say who's doing, you know, more than like 10 million or so in revenue, I think that's where, you know, a service like this really starts to make sense. If you have more than maybe more than $1 million in overall AP annually, that we can help any organization. And so Steve, you're right on the money there, and absolutely correct. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Perfect. Well, Michael, thank you very much. This has been cool, super informative. Appreciate, looking forward to working with you guys for a long time, helping you grow. My dream would be that a year from now you look back and say, oh man, we got 10% of senior living in there, which would be a big win, right? And because this is, I mean, it really does. It seems like sort of a no-brainer to me. So anyway, thank you very much. Have a great weekend. Appreciate all you're doing to make the world a better place.
I appreciate all you do every day to make the world a